My father poured himself a scotch neat. My mother brought out that stupid cheese board she always arranged when she was pretending everything was normal. My older brother, Aaron, walked in 10 minutes late, reeking of cologne and cigarette smoke. Eyes bloodshot and hands jittery. He didn't look at me as he sank into the recliner across from mine. He looked fragile, unstable. The tone was casual, almost absurdly light. But I knew the moment they all sat down across from me. This wasn't a discussion, it was a setup. Mom cleared her throat like she was preparing a speech. Dad stayed quiet, which is what he always did when guilt was involved. I could practically see the outline of betrayal in their eyes before anyone spoke a word. "Sweetheart," Mom started, smiling tightly. "We wanted to talk to you about something important. About the inheritance." I stiffened. I already knew. I didn't know the details yet, but I knew. "You mean the inheritance Granddad left for me?" I asked calmly. "The one he protected, with a trust so no one could touch it unless I agreed in writing?" Dad exhaled. "Yes, that's the one. You know your brother has been going through a rough patch." Aaron let out a bitter laugh. "A rough patch? Really?" Mom cut in quickly. "Aaron's made some mistakes, but he's your brother, and family helps family." My hands gripped the armrests. "What did he do?" They hesitated. Aaron looked away. Dad finally spoke. "He owes money. A lot of money. To some people who aren't very forgiving." I stared at him. "How much?" $750,000, he said, flat, like it was a price tag on a used car. That was the exact amount Granddad had left me. Every penny of it was sitting in a protected trust fund. I couldn't access it until I turned 30. Next year unless I signed off early. They didn't even blink when they said it. They expected me to say yes. They expected me to nod, write the check, and fix Aaron's mess because he was family. Because he was the golden child. Because he had always been the one allowed to screw up without consequence. I leaned forward. "You're telling me that the plan here is to use my inheritance money that Granddad specifically left to me to pay off Aaron's gambling debt?" Mom looked uncomfortable. "It's just money, honey. You'll make more. It's my money." Dad spoke. Again, quieter now. "Aaron's life is in danger. The people he owes, they're not bluffing." I turned to Aaron. "So what? You ran up debts with loan sharks and now I'm supposed to save you?" He didn't respond. He just kept his eyes on the floor. No apology, no shame, just silent expectation. That's when I knew they had already decided. This wasn't a question. This was an ambush. They thought they could manipulate me into signing away the money out of guilt. "Let me guess," I said. "You already spoke to the lawyer. You found out I can break the trust early if I sign the release." Mom nodded slowly. He said, "It would only take a few days." I laughed. It was sharp and bitter and empty. Of course he did. I looked around at the three people I was supposed to trust more than anyone in the world and felt nothing. Just a hollow ache where love used to be. "You think Granddad didn't know what Aaron was? Why do you think he skipped over you all and left the money to me?" "That's not fair," Mom said sharply. "He was sick. He didn't understand what he was doing." "Oh, he understood perfectly," I snapped. "He saw what this family was. He saw how you coddled Aaron, how you let him screw up over and over and never face consequences. He saw how you ignored me every time I did something right." Aaron finally looked up. His eyes were rimmed red. "I didn't ask for this. Didn't you?" I said. "You gambled. You borrowed money. You lied to us all. And now you're letting Mom and Dad do your dirty work for you." He flinched. That was the only satisfaction I got. "I'm not signing anything," I said, standing up. "If you think I'm going to light my future on fire to save him from something he chose, you're out of your minds. You'd let your brother die?" Mom hissed, standing too. Her mask cracked. The warm, reasonable tone vanished. "You'd let him be hurt when you have the power to stop it?" I stared at her coldly. "I didn't put him in this situation. He did. And you helped." She opened her mouth to argue again, but I didn't stay. I walked out the front door. Keys in hand, heart pounding, head on fire. Behind me, I heard my father sigh. "She'll come around. She always does." I didn't look back. This time, they were wrong. I drove around aimlessly for nearly an hour before I finally pulled over in an empty parking lot outside a closed bookstore. I turned the engine off and just sat there in silence, gripping the steering wheel like it was the only thing keeping me grounded. They weren't bluffing. They really intended to rob me, their own daughter, of the one thing my grandfather made sure was protected from them. all to clean up Aaron's mess. Again, it wasn't the money that cut the deepest. It was the betrayal, the quiet certainty in their eyes that I would cave, the way they'd weaponize family like it was some magical word that erased all boundaries, like blood meant ownership. My phone buzzed. A text from Dad. I know this is emotional, but don't make a decision out of anger. Come home and let's talk. I turned the phone over without replying. What was there to talk about? They'd already made their choice. They had chosen Aaron, again, and not just over me, they had chosen him at my expense. Like I was just a backup plan, a vault they could unlock if they smiled sweetly enough and made it sound like love. The next day, I went to see the lawyer who managed my trust. I needed to know how close they'd gotten. He recognized me the moment I stepped into his office. "Ah, Miss Grant, I'm glad you're here. Your father and I had a preliminary call last week about the trust." Of course they had. I assume he asked how to access the money. He hesitated. He was inquiring about emergency disbursement, exceptions. He mentioned medical debt at first, then changed his explanation. "So he lied," I said flatly. "I didn't proceed with anything," the lawyer said quickly. I told him clearly, the terms of the trust are solid. No one can touch that money unless you sign a waiver. Not even your parents. I nodded. Good, because I'm not signing anything. He studied me for a moment. "Are you safe, Miss Grant?" I asked because situations like these, sometimes families use emotional coercion. I smiled without humor. They've been using emotional coercion since I could walk. He didn't press further. Instead, he asked if I wanted to update the contact list on the trust. I removed my father's name, then my mother's, just to be safe. When I got home, there were 3 voicemails from Mom. One where she was crying, one where she was angry, one where she was pretending to be calm and forgiving, as if I'd wronged them. I deleted all 3. The 4th was from Aaron. "Look, I know I messed up, okay? But you have no idea what I'm dealing with. These people, they're serious. I wouldn't ask if it wasn't life or death. Please, you have the money. Just help me this once." I stared at the screen, then hit block. For the next few days, I didn't hear a word. I think they realized I was serious, but silence from them didn't mean silence from my mind. I kept replaying that moment in the living room, Dad's cold tone, Mom's mask slipping, Aaron's blank guilt, the realization that none of them had even considered asking me first. They'd planned it, behind my back, with full expectation that I would submit, and I might have. A year ago, I probably would have. But my grandfather had changed that. His final act on this earth wasn't just to give me money, it was to give me freedom. He knew exactly who they were. That's why he bypassed them in the will. Why he made sure I was protected. Why he trusted me with a future that he knew they'd try to sabotage. The more I thought about it, the more I knew. I couldn't just walk away. Not quietly. Not this time. So I made a plan. First, I contacted the private investigator my grandfather had used years ago during a business fraud case. I asked him to look into Aaron's debt, how much was owed, and to whom. If there were real threats, I wanted to know, but I had a hunch. 3 days later, he called me back. "Your brother's debt is real, but exaggerated," he said. "He owes a little over 200 grand, not 750. The rest, he pocketed, cashed it out, lost it again. It's a cycle. He's already borrowed from 3 people in town under false pretenses. If you'd given him that money, it would have vanished into a black hole." I felt sick, but also vindicated. I wasn't just being dramatic. I was being played. I asked him to compile everything in a file: photos, receipts, testimonies. I paid extra for the whole thing to be notarized. I wasn't going to court, but I wanted evidence. Then, I emailed my parents. Subject: "Here's what I would have signed if I were a fool." Attachment: the PI file. No body text, just silence. That night, Dad called. I didn't answer. Then Mom, then Aaron. I watched them ring and ring, then finally give up. An hour later, a final message arrived. From Mom, a single line. "How could you do this to your own family?" I stared at it, then typed my reply. "I didn't do this. You did. Granddad left that money to me because he knew what you are. And now so do I." I hit send and blocked them all. Not out of spite, out of self-respect. For the first time in my life, I chose me. Weeks passed. I expected things to get messier: lawsuits, manipulation, maybe even a public smear campaign like Aaron once tried with an ex who outed his lies, but none of that came. Instead, There was silence, an eerie, hollow absence where their voices used to live in my life. They didn't reach out again, not for the holidays, not on my birthday, not even when a mutual cousin passed away. I wasn't surprised. In their minds, I was the villain now, the selfish daughter who refused to save her troubled brother, who turned her back on family for a bank account. But I slept better at night. For the first time in years, the inheritance didn't make me happy, but it gave me something my family never had: boundaries. The money sat in the same account, untouched. I didn't run off to a beach or buy a penthouse. I didn't need to. Just knowing they couldn't steal it from me was enough. Then one Friday morning, I got a letter, handwritten, no return address. I recognized the handwriting immediately. Aaron. I stared at it for nearly an hour before finally tearing it open. I know you'll probably never forgive me, and I deserve that. What I did, what we all did, it wasn't just selfish. It was cruel. I let them convince me you owed me something just because you had something I didn't. I blamed you for getting what I threw away, but you didn't deserve what we tried to do to you. You were the only one who ever saw me clearly, and instead of appreciating that, I saw you as the enemy. I was wrong. I'm leaving town. I need to. There's nothing here for me anymore. I owe a lot of people money, and I burned every bridge I had, including the only one that mattered. I hope someday I can build something better, not to earn forgiveness, just to be better than I've been. No ask, no manipulation, no contact info. Just that, for a long time, I didn't know what to feel. It wasn't exactly closure, and I didn't trust it enough to call it redemption, but it was the first real thing Aaron had said to me in years, maybe the only real thing. I didn't write back. I folded the letter and placed it inside the box, where I kept old photographs and a few of my grandfather's belongings. That felt right, not forgiven, not forgotten, but stored, processed. Sometime after, I got an email from my grandfather's old business partner. He said he'd been meaning to reach out after the funeral but gave me space. He was retiring and wanted to transfer ownership of a small nonprofit foundation my grandfather had helped fund. Apparently, Granddad had set it aside as a legacy project, something he hoped I'd one day take over. It's not much, the email read, but he believed in leaving the world better than he found it, and he always said you were the one person he trusted to carry that torch. I met with him the following week. It was a small operation, mentorship for underprivileged youth, literacy programs, some college prep tutoring, but the people were passionate. The work was honest, and for the first time, I saw a place where I could put some of that inheritance to good use without being guilted or manipulated into it. So I did, not all of it, just enough to keep the programs running through the next 5 years. I funded 3 scholarships in my grandfather's name, started a new branch at a high school near the town where he grew up, quietly, no press, no speeches, just action. Some days I still think about the family I lost, or maybe the illusion I lost. There's grief in that too. It's not just the betrayal, it's mourning the idea that your parents were ever really safe people, that your brother could be something other than broken. That love could be unconditional even when respect wasn't there. But in that empty space they left, I found something new. Me. The version of me who doesn't flinch when the phone rings, who doesn't second guess every boundary or apology, who can say no without drowning in guilt, who understands that love without respect is just a leash. That version of me is still learning, still healing, but she's real. And she's strong in a way I didn't think was possible when I first sat down on that couch, staring at the people who raised me and realizing they were ready to sell my future for someone else's failure. I never went back to that house. I heard through someone that they eventually sold it to pay off what was left of Aaron's debts. He didn't come back, and I didn't ask where he went. Sometimes love means hoping someone finds their way. Other times, it means letting go when they don't. And sometimes when you're very lucky, love means protecting the piece of yourself that no one else ever bothered to. That's the piece my grandfather saw in me. The one he built a wall around with $750,000, not as a reward, but as a defense. As proof that someone in this family believed I mattered, not for what I could give but for who I already was. And that was worth more than every dollar in the trust.